Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan Amenta Pierce. It's the Ukraine War Frontline update for the 4th of June 2024. Apologise that I released the incorrect video earlier. I am such an incredible muppet. I'm just not thinking straight today. I've had 3 days, so as many of you know, I have primary progressive multiple sclerosis. I'm not very good at moving. My upper body's okay, but my legs are a bit rubbish. And actually, they're at the worst they've ever been today because I've done 3 days. We've got one of these 12-foot best way swimming pools that you put up. It's not a swimming pool, it's like an oversized paddling pool. You put up, we put it up out in our back, on our back patio for the boys to mess around in the summer. And it's also really good for me. So swimming is a really good exercise for me. It can sustain my body weight. I get in there and I've had 3 days of hammering my front with hooking my legs over the edge, and then also doing my legs, 250 reps yesterday, and then day before, increased. Today, can't walk. Just can't walk. I was speaking to JR about this earlier. I'm in all sorts of trouble, and it's mainly muscle, so delayed onset muscle stress. But anyway, it's a real shame because Dell, who does the stats on a daily basis for the General Staff figures, has offered me to the D-Day commemorations that are taking place in South Common in Portsmouth, amongst other places just near where I live. And I've had to turn him down tomorrow because I literally I wouldn't be able to walk it. I just wouldn't be able to be any use at all. So there you go. The moral of the story is exercise is bad for you or something. Obviously not. Right, I'll get through it. Come on. Okay, we're going to go to the frontline obs, and we will start in Kharkiv, where there are some blue pins. That's good news. That means gains for the Ukrainians. If you don't know what the lines on that mean, check out the screen at the moment. Pause the video. We are also first going to say, actually, first thing I did want to say, this has just come out. Several days of Ukraine pounding the hell out of Russian foreign positions in Belgorod, so that's just where we're at the moment, with no World War III on the horizon, leads to new security, new perspectives in security assistance. So this is a rumor that Biden administration is to hold talks with Ukraine about allowing Kyiv to strike in more parts of Russia with US provided weapons, according to National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby, who told reporters that. So, I mean, I don't think it should come as a shock to anybody that President Zelensky would be grateful on one hand, but also eager to continue to press his case going forward. And so we'll have those talks, we'll have those conversations with the Ukrainians. Absolutely, we will. And whether it leads to any additional policy changes, I can't say at this point. But we're not going to turn our back on what Ukraine needs, and we're going to continue to try to, again, evolve our support to them as the battlefield evolves as well. So I'm not sure whether that actually means that the US is going to go to say, right, we want some talks, let's see if we can move things. But it's like we are going to have this conversation with Ukraine, and we'll consider what they ask of us as this goes forward. The point being that there is hope that ATACMS, for example, could be used across the board, etc., etc. Right, Euromaidan Press reports that Russia is forcibly sending men who refuse to fight to the Kharkiv Oblast. This has come from the ISW, actually. Russian opposition outlet Versta, or it comes from Versta and then the ISW and picked up by Euromaidan, reported on the 3rd of June that Russian military authorities began forcibly sending hundreds of Russian service members who refused to take part in Russian combat operations to the front in Ukraine, including in northern Kharkiv Oblast and Donetsk City in May 2024. Donetsk Oblast, sorry. According to ISW, Versta stated that the Russian military holds the service members at military unit base points in Russia as they wait trial for crimes related to their refusal to fight before suddenly cancelling their trials and immediately sending them to Ukraine. We've seen 2 of those places, one in Irkutsk, I think it was, and the other I'm not sure where it was. But it appears that we seem to know that they are locking them up in some kind of detention before deciding to do something with them. Now it appears that they are sending some of them to the front lines, including in Kharkiv. It goes to show what the morale is for those troops anyway, for them to refuse to do what they've been asked. B, it shows you that the Russians are probably taking a bit of a beating in certain areas for that morale to be low and for those people to refuse to go back. And C, it shows how desperate Russia are to get those troops into these meat assault units. None of it is good news for Russia. So anyway, the 71st Jaeger Brigade Battalion of Ukraine's armed forces have pushed Russian forces out to the north and east of the city of Vovchansk. northeast of the city over the past 2 days. That's really good news for the Ukrainians. Indeed, Surret Maps agrees that the situation on the northeastern front from Kyiv access, the situation inside Vovchansk is fluid and confused. The Volchansky Aggregatny Zavod factory could not be held by the Russians, while from the south it seemed the Ukrainian troops continue to resist. On the other hand, the epicenter of the fighting is taking place in the high-rise buildings, either under grey zone or Ukrainian control. Nor can there be talk of massive Ukrainian counteroffensive. Russian troops are holding their positions despite the arrival of the Ukrainian reinforcements and war material. Of course, Surret Mats can never, ever show the Ukrainians doing anything with the kind of language that they show when Russia takes ground, and the sort of adjectives they use. It's like so begrudging. Nor can there be talk of a massive Ukrainian counteroffensive. On the other hand, fighting is taking place either in the grey zone or Ukrainian control. One or the other. It seems that Ukrainian troops continue to resist. Language, I always pay attention to language. And this kind of language is so typical. It's like, Ukraine's done really well. They counterattacked and pushed back the Russians. Well, it seems it's either grey zone or the Ukrainians might have had some success. Yeah, whatever, mate. But thanks, Surret Map, for doing the work of the mapping, of course. It is very valuable for us all. But it's just interesting to know what they think, really, by inference. Anyway, Vovchansk geolocated footage says no reports confirms that Ukrainian forces have recaptured significant parts of eastern Vovchansk. See the language difference there, and of course this is a pro-Ukrainian. Have recaptured significant parts of eastern Vovchansk, north of the Volcha River, and of course that's prone to being too positive for Ukraine, right? North of the Volcha River, and are further advancing to the northeastern part. Heavy fighting reported in the area, highlighted in green. So things are tough there, but the Ukrainians seem to be doing fairly well. And Rebar, let's look at the overtly pro-Russian MOD-aligned source, saying in recent days situations remain tense in the Slobozhenska direction. Ukrainian units are regularly counter-attacking and not giving up attempts to reduce the combat potential of Russian troops. Heavy fighting, I love that, they're not giving up attempts to reduce the combat potential of Russian troops, are not stopping killing Russians. Okay. Heavy fighting is underway. Just language again. Heavy fighting is underway in Vovchansk, where the AFU are trying to establish supply lines in the part of the city north of the Volcha River. South of the Harahina Street, Russian assault troops are advancing only locally due to artillery strikes and especially FPV drones of the enemy. So this is again the admission that FPV drones are being used incredibly effectively in the area. Ukrainian units retain the ability to establish crossings using bridge layers. However, according to the footage, the Russian armed forces have destroyed at least 3 such structures only in the section of the west of the bridge on Soborna Street. This is something I was expecting, actually. It's interesting to hear about this. So there are there is this river in Vovchansk, where the Volchka River, where the Russians had forced themselves up to, and you would expect for the Ukrainians to be able to keep supplying their troops inside the city. It's highly likely that all of these bridges have been destroyed at some point or another. I'd imagine bridge layers are going to be very well used in this area, but you will lose them. So you'll lay a bridge, it will last for a period of time. And then it will get blown up, and the idea is you need the bridge layer. You don't lose the vehicle with doing that unless it's hit doing it. So you'll be prepared to then go back and lay another one, go back and lay another one. But obviously you want to look after your bridge layers. The Germans have provided a number of those, but you can see here Surret maps showing the Ukrainians have pushed back in that area. Just to finish off Rebar, Ukrainian units retain the ability to establish crossings using those bridge layers. Sorry, I've read that. Information is circulating online about the start of the assault of the Vovchansk engineering plant, but so far it's not been confirmed. This is what Surret Mats was referring to. The main strong point of defence in the northern part of the city remains a quarter of high-rise buildings, which, although it has suffered severe damage, both sides have been hammering it with guided glide bombs, still serves as a tactically advantageous line of defence. To the east, there are battles in the east of Hoholia Street, and north of Vovchansk, in anticipation of the possible counter-offensive by the enemy. Russian troops are digging in and carrying out fortification work. Ukrainian units are trying to prevent this by attacking engineering equipment with drones. Fighting continues along the Geopolitics line, where the Ukrainians do not stop counter-attacking. Russian troops are intensively striking concentrations of enemy manpower and equipment, suppressing Ukrainian attacks in the other areas is the direction. There are battles, but no advances are reported. So that's to say, they are trying to dig in behind here, the Russians, but they are being hit by drones. And then when we come over to the west, Gleboké, Luhansk, and also Lipsy over here, or down there, this kind of area, there are counterattacks by the Ukrainians, is the claim there. Finally, at the same time, the destruction of enemy objects and positions along the entire line of contact continues. Northeast of Kharkiv, the Lancet loitering munition destroyed another OSA air defense system. However, Ukrainian units do not stop hitting the border areas of the Belgorod region. Their local population continues to suffer from artillery and FPV drone strikes. Of course, it doesn't talk about the military suffering or the two S-400 air defense systems. It's just about to mention that, but do you know what I mean? The AFE also actively use HIMARS to strike at positions and objects remote from the front line, including SAM launch positions. So it's a reference to those at least one, possibly two entire batteries affected, and another radar system as well. It's the Castor radar system. So yeah, the Russians are suffering north of the border there, and they appear to be suffering south of the border as well. I have now started labeling this an operational disaster for the Russians. I just don't think it was well thought through. I don't think they've achieved any of their objectives, and we still don't fully know for sure what their objectives are, but they must be some kind of combination of buffer zone, artillery on Kharkiv, and drawing Ukrainian troops away from the front line. Haven't really achieved that. There are some. You could argue that some units from the Ukrainian front line have gone there, some from Krinky area, possibly why the Ukrainian forces aren't on the left bank of the Dnipro there. So yeah, okay, maybe a little bit of that one. But the problem is that they've then got into such a they've made such a pig's ear of it that they've had to draw their own troops from the front line and from training centres. So it seems just a bit of a disaster. Anyway, moving, it's not to say it won't change, but there you go. Moving down, northeastern sector, no change to the front line there. So indeed, the first change then is to just north of Solidar in the Rozdalivka area, where some tiny gains are made just between Mykolaievka and Rozdalivka, but I don't think it's anything to particularly be concerned with. No change to Chasiv Yar. Again, there, well, we saw some small changes actually yesterday, didn't we? But we have had many days where there haven't been changes, and that's always good for the Ukrainians. Tough fighting around there, no doubt. Then we come to the Avdiivka sector, where we can see the Russians have made some small gains going westwards from Ocheritina towards towards Pokrovska, really, both there and on the way to Sokil, just from Solovyovo area. Surat Maps talks about both of those gains, saying, and again, it's only Surat Maps that has those gains. During the last 48 hours, the Russian army captured trenches south of Novoalexandrivka, while other troops began the assault on Sokil. So far, Russians managed to capture the positions of the eastern outskirts of the village. So that is what they're claiming there, just some eastern outskirts of Sokil, tree lines by the looks of it. But fighting soon to be in Sokil, I would imagine. And then as we come further down, we can see that Netalove, just south of there, southwest of there, Andrew Perpetua has some gains for the Russians. All of this well within the gains that have already been signified by the mapping of Surat Maps and Deep State Maps. So probably no change from the last 24 hours there. That's just a confirmatory change, but not going all the way though from Andrew Perpetua. And then we come down further past Krasnohorivka to Mariinka, and Herivka further down to Pobieda, and a place where the Russians have been seems to be pinned back in that agricultural settlement of Pobieda, which was an important place to stop a flanking attack of Mariinka. But of course, Mariinka then fell, so Pobieda was always going to go after that. But Russians have made a move slightly to the south from there, it appears. And then there is Paraskevivka here, just to the west of Novomykolaievka, as they move on towards Konstantinivka. Now, a few things to note. So we'll go first back up to here. We're going to talk about Karlivka. This is the Karlivka reservoir there. So I think we have something about Karlivka. Yeah, so that was again, it might have been from yesterday. It's not on this map, but it is on there. So this could be one that was made a change. The mapping change was yesterday, but the tweet came out today. During the last 4 days, the Russian army advanced west of and southwest of Netorove to the eastern dachas of Karlivka. That is, I'd say, a bit of a challenge because Karlivka is fairly useful. You got down there, and on from there, it becomes a little bit challenging. It'll be good for the Ukrainians to put a stop to that advance. It makes this kind of area all the more precarious, I guess. But anyway, back to where we were, which was Paraskevivka here. A few comments on this. So in Paraskevivka, Russians took positions in the western part of the village during the assault. Previously, according to footage from drones, the advance of the enemy forces in an area up to 400 meters wide to a depth of up to 480 meters was taken. So that's a claim that the Russians are making some gains there. And Surat Maps indeed talks about Paraskevivka here, saying that during the last 11 days of combat, the Russian army managed to capture most of the village of Paraskevivka. Bit of a change there. Okay, moving on. No change around Vuhledar, although there's a bit of talk about Vuhledar at the moment. So I think there is renewed activity around there. No change to Velika Novosilka. Just a little bit of a change to the Robotina area there, but it might have been a change from yesterday. We can just little change from the last 10 days. But no large scale changes to anywhere really on the southern front, and that includes Dnipro too. So positional fighting, I think, in Krinky, as in I'm not really sure the Ukrainians are actually on the left bank of the river anymore, but it doesn't mean that the Russians can easily walk through and reclaim that territory, because they just get hit by the remaining drone units that are there, knowing that a lot of the drone operators and units have gone up to Kharkiv, where Magyar's birds were down here, and now they're operating to great effect up in Kharkiv and causing all sorts of problems for the Russians. Anyway, that's the Frontline update for today, the 4th of June. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.